For those of you joining us live, just know that this is recorded, and so you will get access to the recording. I'm just gonna change my view here a little bit so I can get a bit better, brighter. There we go. I hope you're all excited to learn about mushrooms today. I know I have found this to be one of my very favorite topics to talk about. Something we're going to look at today is how mushrooms are similar to us in many ways. We're going to look at some of the medicinal benefits. We're going to talk about where they could be found, some of the top mushrooms, how to work with them, dosage, and so much more. And like I mentioned, this is being recorded. You're also going to get access to the notes at the end and a special little surprise at the very end. So stick around for the whole webinar, but do know that you will get all the information again. And just want to give a big shout out to our co-host here. Juliana is going to be helping answer some of the questions that are live in the Q&A, as well as in the chat. So you can let us know in the chat. Obviously, I'm hoping you can hear me. Oh, and yes. Let me know that you can hear me. Also, let me know where you are coming from and what type of beverage you are choosing to drink tonight. So I'll start with myself. I'm drinking Adapting Gems tea. This is one of my favorite from Harmonic Arts. It's just such a great tea. We now call it Adapt, but it's really a bunch of adaptogen tonics, and one of them is Reishi. So we'll talk about Reishi as well tonight. But this one's got Schizandra and ashwagandha and holy basil and rhodiola, and just such a good tasting tea. Looks like we got some folks joining us from Portland, from Maine, right on, drinking chaga and lemon. Victoria, Calgary, a few folks from all over. All right, from New Brunswick, Chicago, Vancouver, folks coming in from Port Coquitlam, Peace River, Alberta. Awesome. Okay, well, I've got a PowerPoint for you, and I'm going to get that rolling here in a minute. But just want to say appreciate you and your time. I am a myco warrior, and I am very happy to answer any questions at the end. We're going to go for about an hour and a half here, but I will make sure I leave room for questions. So ask me your hard to answer mushroom questions. Maybe it's about health concerns, maybe it's about dosage, maybe it's about benefits in general. But yeah, think about that. There is a Q&A, and we'll try to answer those live if we can. And if you add a question in the chat, it may or may not get answered, but Juliana will be scrubbing the chat as well. All right, so I'm going to start my screen share, and here we go. And I will try to keep the chat available for myself to see. Let me know that you can see this, and I'm just going to start from the beginning. Great. All right. Okay. Thanks for joining us. Modern mushroom medicine. This is really one of the top medicines of our time. Mushrooms have really come onto the scene with a lot of health benefits. They're not only backed up with a lot of benefits, they have a lot of studies done. Most of the studies have been done in Asia, though. Mushrooms have been part of the Asian, at least the TCM, Chinese medicine culture, for well over 2,000 years of written history, up to 4,000 years of traditional folkloric anecdotal evidence, which has led to the Chinese really spending the money on doing all kinds of studies. I know when I was in China, I went to the University of Hangzhou, and that's kind of the tech capital, sort of like the Silicon Valley of China. That's where they get some of the most funding. And the university there had a whole wing, or like a big area dedicated just to mushrooms, to researching mushroom cultivation, researching mushroom benefits, all these different things. And they got millions of dollars worth of funding every year to study medicinal mushrooms. We see this as something that is a big pride of China that way. And in Asian culture, they use reishi everywhere. This mushroom is that one in particular. Any of the little small villa towns, a lot of the times we would see statues of like a monk holding reishi. And got a quick question. Will there be slides, a copy of the slides in the handout? The handout will have a version of the slides very similar to how it's laid out here, but with more information. So yes, you will get slides. Anyway, reishi was a big part, is a big part of that culture. And we see that now, even like in the Russian attempt to find the superior human back in the 80s, they spent a lot of money studying both reishi and chaga and a number of other mushrooms. We see throughout Europe, actually even in Russia, there's some pharmaceuticals after chaga. Anyway, we'll get there. We'll talk about some of the benefits of all of these different things, but I really want to start high level. What are mushrooms? Like, what are they? Well, there's a little bit of a difference between fungus and mushroom. Now, mushrooms are a macrofungus. What does that mean? It's sort of like how algae, you have blue-green algae, which is like spirulina and chlorella, and that's a microalgae. And then you have seaweed, which is a macroalgae. So when it produces a full fleshy, in the case of seaweed, a full plant, that is a macroalgae. So in this case with mushrooms, really what they are is they produce a fruiting body, is an actual mushroom, or they produce some kind of extracellular metabolite that is for sexual reproduction. Very different from some yeasts or molds in the fridge. Many of them don't produce full-on fruiting bodies. And so really a macrofungi is a mushroom. And so this is very different. We'll see you have many different benefits and different types of chemistry than just any old fungus. Now, there are a lot of different types of fungus. There's a lot more than there are types of mushrooms. And I will say the biggest thing that gives us a clue into how mushrooms might be beneficial to our health is the fact that we share similar DNA. We are from the same side of the evolutionary cycle. So plants diverged quite a bit earlier, and fungi have very similar genetic material. They end up, when you look at it, they breathe similar to us, breathing in oxygen, out carbon dioxide. They eat off the post-metabolites of plants, just like we do. They develop their hypha, develop a nervous system similar to ours, in the sense of the way the impulse waves that we've measured and with electromagnetic measuring go up and down the hypha. We see that they're very similar to animals. We also see that they produce, the way that they produce offspring with the positive and negative gram, positive gram negative cells. If you look at it really close, the reproductive cycle of a mushroom is actually very similar to humans, something mysterious that pops up in the middle of the night. No, just kidding. But they do have very similar type of genetic material, which means they get similar diseases. Why I really want to stress this point is that this is a huge clue into how mushrooms and why mushrooms are so beneficial for us, at least the medicinal mushrooms. They've developed strategies for dealing with pathogenic organisms on planet Earth that we humans and animals, for that matter, have just not quite evolved into yet. So many of the fungal polysaccharides are advanced technology, really, in the chemistry world for being able to adapt and being more resilient and modulate to changing environments and extreme pathogens. Now, you got to remember that most mycelium live in an environment that is really rich with nutrients, but also really rich with pathogenic organisms. So they've got to defend themselves, and they use polysaccharides is the main way, but there's lots of other bits of chemistry, different antioxidant type compounds and polyphenol groups, as well as there's a bunch of terpenes in terpenes, monoterpenes, and triterpenes. Mostly triterpenes are heavier compounds. Anyway, similar DNA, similar organism structure. And yeah, so where do we find them? We see mushrooms everywhere, pretty much everywhere, from the stratosphere to a mile below the surface. If you look up and you understand that, as you go higher and higher into the atmosphere, it gets harder and harder for different organisms to survive. Well, you get bacteria, and then even pollen has a threshold of how high it can go. But further up, we'll see that all around the stratosphere, the furthest level from our Earth, are mushroom spores. And this is a whole, theory. I think Terence McKenna was the first one to bring this one up, but it was the idea that, and he might not have been the first, he just sort of used it for his alien intelligence theories, but that anything that comes in and out of the atmosphere gets dipped in a coat of spores that have the ability to survive through space. And potentially life came down to our planet via an asteroid with spores on it from somewhere else. So there's a lot of potential that mycelial nets and fungi are part of the original cultivation of our planet. But it also goes to say that any planet evolved like Earth that has multiple species and biodiversity that creates all kinds of unique fungal life. The spores are then the seed of the planet. And the theory is that potentially humans, our only reason for evolving is actually to create spaceships and get mycelial spores off the planet so that planet Gaia can plant a new planet somewhere. Food for thought. We might die out, but the spores will survive in space. Anyway, they make up a quarter of the biomass of our planet, which is massive. So fungal life is a huge part. It's in every little inch of soil. Every plant has some type of relationship with mycelium. And we see this mycorrhizal connection between roots and mycelium as being the most advantageous way to produce and create nutrients. To be able to harvest nutrients out of the earth, roots don't do a good job, but mycelium can actually eat rock and bring out nutrient beds from far and wide to support a plant's full nutritional need. So that's a huge part of the strategy that Earth has for as an immune system, is actually just using fungal wood wide webs, as we like to call them, to support immune health of the whole planet and to keep the whole planet a little more modulated for temperature as well as for biodiversity. We see that the largest organisms on Earth are mycelial based. Amarilla species, a honey mushroom, or armillaria, honey mushroom, is estimated to be, all the way up to 8,000 years old. We don't even know how old this one is. And this one spans in Oregon. This is one of the bigger ones, but we did originally, the first recognition of a honey mushroom this size was in Michigan, and it was called the Michigan Monster. And basically they tried to do sonar testing and found this whole blip that they couldn't read through, and they thought, what is this, like blocked sonar testing? And they thought maybe this is some kind of underground base. And no, it was just a honey mushroom. But since then, we've seen that there are many other large organisms like this where they can actually test the DNA on two sides of like acres and acres, kilometers away, and see that it all originated from one spore. So really cool. Mushrooms can grow massive. They're old, they're wise. They are the guardians of our planet. So they really are worth us being a little more humble and appreciative of the power that they have to keep our planet healthy. I think Paul Stamets once said, those who align with mushrooms will survive the coming epoch, or something like that. Maybe he didn't say that, but it was very similar looking at history, how the species that aligned with mycelial growth were the ones that survived the ice ages, the ones that survived the many different catastrophic events. Mycelial nets have a huge benefit to support our health, but the entire planet, from oil cleanup to so much more. There's it's amazing what we can do with mycelial nets. And, even I got my composter from a good friend of mine who does the Speedy Bin composts bins, and really great composter. Well, she packed it all in mushroom styrofoam, right? And so just really neat how it can replace that. Mushroom leather, mushroom clothes, mushroom printing, there's, you name it. I've even heard of mushroom gel caps now being made, and there's just so much that we can keep evolving and growing out of mycelial nets. And so I just hope to see that work continue. Okay. All right. So I am going to get into some of the Q&As as we go. I see a couple of people asking, and just keep asking, keep dropping questions in there. Yeah. And but actually, I'll answer this one quick question. And it's if you're allergic to one type of mushroom, does that mean you can't use any? No, it depends. And no, the answer is no, it doesn't mean you can't use any. Typically when people are allergic to mushrooms, this is just a common allergy for really what it comes down to often is candida and fungus overgrowth. Ironically, it's usually button mushrooms, portobello mushrooms, fleshy, meaty mushrooms. These are very different from your reishi, from your chaga, from your hard conchs. The hard conchs don't have any of those same compounds in them that might cause, we'll call it a candida flare-up or some type of allergic response. They're actually quite antifungal. Most of the like polypores, like red belts, and the Ganodermas and the Fomentopsis species and tinderconchs and all of those different ones, turkey tail, most of them have antifungal compounds. And if you're allergic to certain mushrooms, those might help combat your allergies. They're also anti-inflammatory in the gut lining, many of the medicinal mushrooms, meaning that if you have generalized allergic response, histamine reactions, mushrooms like reishi are very, very good for anti-allergenic compounds. So we actually put reishi in our allergy blend because it has a really good ability to calm down histamine reactions and inflammation in the gut. So I will say, if you think you're allergic or you know you're allergic to food mushrooms, there's a couple of things there. One is look at all the other factors you can control. Do you have a high candida load? Do you eat a lot of simple sugars? That'll affect it. Do you have mites in your carpets and or allergic to down, filling? How is your filters on your house? Is it pollen? So what are these other things you can help to avoid to combat that kind of allergic threshold? And then taking some of the medicinal mushrooms actually help often with some mushroom allergies, like from oysters and portobellas and all the fleshy ones. Okay, back to our slide. Thanks for the question. Keep asking questions and I will jump over. Over 10,000 species. I've seen reports of 50,000. I've seen reports of more. We don't really know. We're still like, I've seen reports of 80,000 species. We know that we really have no idea how many species of mushrooms there really are. Not all of them produce fruiting bodies right off the bat. Some of them take years upon years before they actually produce fruiting bodies. You need the perfect situation. They can live as mycelium underground for decades, and then boom, perfect season, out comes a fruiting body. So we don't know how many there really are. We're discovering new mushrooms all the time. We're finding that in intact old growth ecosystems, this is where you see a wide variety. I mean, even here in the Comox Valley where I live in Comox Treaty First Nations territory, this is unceded territory, beautiful land. It's only small amount of old and second growth forest. And in the older growth forest, you start to see such a diversity of mycelial growth and fruiting bodies, like just popping up everywhere on the forest floor, far more than there are species of plants. And the challenge is there's such few of these spaces. Although when you see a second growth forest start to get old enough, aka 100, 120 years, 130 years, 150-year-old, you start to see many of these old growth mushrooms come back to these forests. So there is hope for that. We just got to stop cutting down forests, because there might be some of the world's best medicines. In fact, when you look at pharmaceuticals, I could be wrong about this fact, because I remember reading it once that it was like 43% of pharmaceuticals are derived from mycelial intelligence, from mycelial chemistry. Some of them are still made of mushrooms, but they've often synthesized the chemistry once they've developed it. But most of our pharmaceuticals came from fungal chemistry. Many of the unique chemical compounds that mushrooms make and the structures they make have profound effects on the body. And so what we're seeing is that some of the mushrooms like the agarikon mushroom that grow only in old growth forests here, most antiviral mushroom on the planet, really huge benefits to some of these old strains of mushrooms that may or may not survive if we keep cutting down forests. So there's probably plenty out there too, especially in some of the more tropical regions of our planet, that we just have no idea how amazing they have their benefits. We just haven't taken the time to research them. So more needs to be done. But really, when we take the basic math of what we do know, we think it's only 10%. And we know that at least 270 species have medicinal properties. So that's quite a few. And some of those, like the Ganoderma species, I mean, there's just so many variants to Ganodermas, and they grow all over the world. And that's the Reishi family. When I was in China, I was at the museum there for Reishi, and they had 93 species just growing in Asia, and this was all 3 different parts of Asia. And I was like, wow, that's incredible how many species of just Ganoderma. Okay. So we know that they're everywhere. And a really little quick brief thing on the life cycle, just so we're all on the same page here. Really, there's four main stages of the life cycle. It starts with spores. Remember I mentioned that those can be way up in the stratosphere, way above us, but also they can travel through the air. You're breathing in spores every minute of every day, continually. Spores are all around us, and especially when we're close to the ecosystems, there's even more. So in every breath, you breathe in spores. When they find the right substrate, they germinate. And when they germinate, they produce kind of gram-negative, gram-positive little hyphas, and then they mingle and coordinate and do this kind of kundalini little dance, and they build out mycelium. And then they mate for life. They are polyamorous, but once they're together for life. So you can have many male, many female spores. Once they've really created a real strong mycelial net, they'll wait until there's a good amount of rain and the conditions are moist enough. They'll start to produce primordia, and primordia is the pre-mushroom. It's really dense clusters inside the mycelium that start to rise to the surface of the ground and push through to break through the surface before it actually comes into a fruiting body. And then once the primordia becomes exposed to oxygen, it'll start to, once it's broken the ground, it'll start to push up and produce a fruiting body. Now, this is whether it's on a tree or on the ground or whatever sort of enclosed environment it is. Before it gets to fruiting body, it always starts with that primordial development. And then from there, the fruiting body, once its cap opens or its structure, typically most mushrooms have a cap in order to protect their gills. And inside of the gills is a whole nother stage of life, and that's where all the spores come. And one thing that's interesting to me about the caps is on many mushrooms, they work as a bit of a like barometer for the environment. You'll see, I know on some of the Ganodermas I've seen, when there's an updraft and there's that 4 o'clock sun coming through the edge of the forest, shining on the cap of the mushroom, they'll start to produce 4 to 10 times more spores, just push out the spores, because they know they got this updraft. They know they've got warm weather, and that evening sun coming in, or that morning sun coming, typically the evening sun is what I've seen. And they up channel quite a bit more spores. So we start to see that they use this as part of that barometer. And I think the facts are, I forget them, they're on one of my slides in another PowerPoint, but it's somewhere around the like trillion spores an hour that a Ganoderma produces. And it's massive, like trillions upon trillions of spores in a season, no problem. Many of these mushrooms are producing massive abundance. I think the one number I read was with giant puffball, if all of the spores from a puffball, a giant puffball that is, were to germinate and go into mycelium and produce a full-size mycelial net of puffball, from one puffball mushroom, we'd have a mass the size 3 times bigger than our sun. So if you think of the Earth as a golf ball and the sun as a beach volleyball, we're talking about a whale here. Just massive, something that's just, yeah, impressive. Anyway, yeah, the spores of mushrooms are impressive. They also live for a long time with their enclosed capsulated coat. Like I said, they can travel in space, many of them. They can handle the stratosphere. They can be buried in clay, and boom, up they come, ready to go. So if we take this planet down a notch and make it hard for all life to live, well, the mycelial spores will still be around, and they will recolonize this planet. Okay, so that's, yeah. So let's talk a bit about mushroom extraction processes, and then we're gonna get into some of the benefits. So to start off with, mushrooms, there's a lot of ways to open up the chemistry, but the thing is you have to open up the chemistry. You can't just eat mushrooms. Many of you can, one of the things, when the first question that came up with, like, people are allergic to mushrooms? Well, actually, no mushroom should be eaten raw. Even those button mushrooms they put on a salad, those are typically best cooked. And you'll notice you give them a light fry and wow, they're so much tastier, way more digestible, just way better. So Those have been dumbed down with further chemistry, so they really don't have much in them, but you still should cook every mushroom. And the reason is there's lignans, there's like plant fibers, and chitin, which is similar to the exoskeleton of insects and your fingernails and your hair follicles. This material is non-digestible. And when you break it open with a bit of heat, it makes it far more bioavailable, far more digestible. It also makes all the chemistry inside unlocked. So much of the chemistry in a mushroom is locked. And so what we need to do is heat it in order to extract the water-soluble compounds. Now, if there are any kind of, I'll say, essential oils, or we're usually many of the antioxidant groups and many of the phenolic compounds, and these strong flavors are often smaller chemistry. Typically, they have a bit of a benzene ring structure, and they're locked in a way that our digestive system doesn't do a good job of digesting. So if that's the case, we want to extract those compounds, usually in alcohol. Now, there are some other compounds that can be extracted in vinegar. Things like psilocybin actually is better extracted in vinegar than alcohol, although it can break down as well. So it turns into psilocin really quickly. So that's one. If you're looking at psychedelic mushrooms, vinegar is another better way to extract them. But alcohol is typically the best way to extract your advanced chemistry in the form of terpene groups and those type of compounds. So water-soluble compounds are mostly the polysaccharides. Now, all of our medicinal mushrooms have a lot of polysaccharides. So we want to make sure we're extracting the polysaccharides with water. So that's the most typical way. As you can see, I'm drinking tea, and this was brewed in a decoction. Now, this is an adaptogen tea. It's not just reishi. It's got reishi in it. But the idea is that a decoction is a simmered tea. So that's the first way we want to extract. In a simmered tea, typically I would be simmering your tea for between 15 minutes to 3 hours, depending on how robust of a concentrate you want to make. And also, if you simmer it too high, you boil the living bejesus out of it, you're going to lose some of the other compounds, some of the antioxidant compounds, things like chaga tea. They make a much different taste. If you really boil it hard, you get a very different taste than you would if you just give it a light simmer. So my invitation for making mushroom tea is to double boil in trouble, light simmer, right? This is the easiest way to go. The other thing is you can start to add some of your wild conchs in there. I typically like to start with a chaga tea base because it's very tasty. And I'll maybe add 10% reishi, 10% turkey tail. If I've got a few other wild conchs, I might take my pruning shears and just sort of slice off little bits of them to put into my decoction tea. Another way to do a decoction is to do it in a crock pot. Really simple crock pot teas are a favorite of mine. I do what's called an evolutionary tea, where I start with a mushroom base in the crock pot, drink that for a day. Then I add some roots in the next day, keep re-simmering it. You can usually rebrew these 3 to 4 times. And then from there, I'll go one more round of herbs, another round potentially of flowers or more gentle things. And over the course of 5 or 6 days, I'll have had a different tea every day, but I'll add different herbs in based on how many times I can rebrew them and how long it takes to break them down. So mushrooms are one of the hardest, but so are barks and roots. Anyway, need decoctions. Now, a dual extract tincture is basically taking that decoction tea, but making it really concentrated. And then making a tincture, making it really concentrated and putting the two together. There's a few different methods to do this. And just a quick plug, if you are interested in this, I've done a video on YouTube for this. We also have a speaker coming to our herb conference, the Vancouver Island Herb Conference this year in June, that is going to be going deep into dual extractions. And the main method is you start with the decoction. And well, actually, no, there's two differences. You either start with the tincture, or you start with the decoction, or you do them all separate. So I'll give you really high level. You start with the decoction, you simmer up your mushrooms, you make them really, really strong, and then you freeze the decoction. And then you take the leftover mushrooms that you've strained out and you make a tincture with it. And you take that tincture and you brew that up, shaking it every day, again, making it as concentrated as possible for 2 weeks. And then you take the frozen decoction, you melt it down, and you put it back into the tincture. and combine the two and press it out again. Typically, I would like to heat the decoction back up a little bit to make it more alive and vigorous before adding the tincture into it. The other method is you make a tincture first, and then you press out those mushrooms and you make them into a decoction. That method, the alcohol does break open the mushrooms a bit, and so can be useful, and it's easier to do the tincture first, because you can't always, not everyone has the space to freeze their decoction in their freezer. Yeah, so making that can work better. And another method, which is what we do at Harmonic Arts, because it's just really far easier, is you make them with two separate batches. You do your decoction with one batch of mushrooms and your tincture with another batch of mushrooms, and then you put the two together. And we do that because the tinctures will last a really long time. And so we can have our half-finished tinctures ready to go. And then we add in our decoctions. And we make these really, really concentrated. So if you've ever tried a Harmonic Arts tincture, you will know that these are some of the most concentrated mushroom tinctures on the planet, or at least I know that. They're super dark. They have a really nice flavor. I might even go grab one downstairs. I've been really enjoying our tinctures as of late because I actually just got over COVID. Yeah, it sucked. But our mushroom tinctures were amazing in my recovery, and just have been hands down the best medicine I've been using to help really rebound and build my health back up. So anyway, then we have dual extracted powders, and that's something that we also do at Harmonic Arts. That's a specialty of taking a mushroom fruiting body, making a concentrated liquid in an alcohol form and a tincture form, reducing that down to a powder. So thinking of a juice powder of a tincture. And that's what a dual extracted powder is. So it's not just powdered mushrooms, it ends up being a really hyper concentrated version of that. So most of ours are between 8:1 to 12:1 in extraction ratio, which means 12 grams of mushroom goes into that 1 gram of powder, or 7 or 8 grams into the 1 gram. I like these because they're easy. The thing that's nice about the dual extracted powders is they become instant tea. So I love to just take a teaspoon, put it in a cup of hot water, and bam, I have tea. For me, with chaga, I actually like chaga with a bit of I like to butterproof my chaga, which means add butter and blend it in the blender. So I'll take even just a little bit of chaga powder, our dual extracted powder, and maybe usually what I do is a bit of dual extracted powder of chaga and a bit of dual extracted powder of our 5 mushroom blend, throw it into my blender with a little scoop of butter and some hot water, and bam, I've got a nice chaga kind of mini micro elixir. I like that. That's one of my favorite. But I also see that dual extraction powders can go into oatmeal, soups, salad dressings, you name it. There's a lot, like we put them in baking, and our kids don't even notice they're in the cookies. But you have to be careful. The reishi is quite bitter, so putting too much in will throw off certain foods. But in general, the 5 mushroom is my favorite for that because it's got a very neutral flavor. And it's got the benefits of all 5 mushrooms. Steam extracted powders and micronized powders, I should add into here. They're similar to the steam extracted powders. The micronizing process does break it down a little smaller, so you get a bit more absorption. But really what it is doing is it's a heating process. And heating the straight mushroom powder or mycelium powder, depending on the sourcing, because most of the American grown mushrooms are all pretty much just mycelium on grain. Those you would extract with heat, and that heat process breaks open the chitin and the lignins and makes the cell walls bioavailable. That's a great method for just basically turning a mushroom powder into a little more bioavailable mushroom powder, but you're still eating all the lignins and chitin, and that's nothing wrong with that. That's good for your microbiome, helpful for your health in general, but it's not that potent. So you will still get less absorption, less of those polysaccharides. There might be lots of polysaccharides in a steam extracted powder, but you get less of them absorbed into the bloodstream, and you'll get a little less, well, pretty much none of the terpene groups, if there are any terpene groups in that product. So I find this to be a process that could still use a further extraction. So I might take a steam extracted or a micronized mushroom and potentially want to put that into a tincture, or decoct it still, and still actually really heat it and break it open and make it more bioavailable. Syrups are similar to decoctions, but it's adding honey. So instead of doing an alcohol extraction, doing a decoction with honey. I really like this for chaga. Makes a nice chaga syrup. It's one of my favorites for our soda stream. We have like one of those bubblers. I'm making a chaga syrup or doing any kind of mushroom syrup in general. Really easy to do. With our dual extracted powders too, the other thing you can do, and what I've done for the kids, just quick syrup, simple syrup, is add a little bit of hot water and a bit of honey, and then put a scoop of the mushroom powder in there and cook it up, let it cool. I've got a syrup. So yeah, really simple and a great way to get kids taking mushrooms with a bit of honey, right? Now, not everybody likes honey or does honey. You can do simple syrups even with monk fruit sweetener. You can do them keto if you want. So yeah, it just depends on where you're at that way. But if you like kind of like a herbal mocktail type format, where you got a syrup and a bubbly water, that's a great way to work with them. I've even seen a friend of mine, she uses elderberry syrup and chaga syrup on pancakes. Thinks that's great. Okay, so those are just a few ways to extract mushrooms. There are many more. I will say that those are the main ones. Other ones you will look at is whether it's dual extracted or steam extracted or micronized or whatever it is in a capsule is a format, right? The only challenge with capsules is they are not as bioavailable. So it's really useful to either open the capsule and taste the mushrooms so you actually get some of that biofeedback loop from your body. This is one thing that's really important about tasting the things we put into our body, is that it sends an electromagnetic or a chemical signal to the brain, which tells the digestive system how to set up and gets better absorption, gets us primed for the experience of food or whatever it is, the chemistry that we're putting in our mouth. This is part of our intelligence. So I think it's important. I'd also say that it's really useful for, if you are taking capsules, to make sure that you're getting a capsule of a mushroom fruiting body where you have the highest quality fruiting body and it's well extracted in a way that makes it more concentrated, because you're only getting a little bit, right? So make sure you get a really concentrated extract, or the labels may say take 2 capsules a day, but you might find that the real benefits would come from 6. Yeah, if it's not been properly extracted, you might need a lot more. Okay, let's talk. Actually, before we get into Reishi, I'll leave the slide up, but I'm going to do a little bit of Q&A. I feel like I want to just jump in there for just a second and answer a couple of questions. I find what happens is I answer them all at the end, and then there's just not enough time. So, okay, I'm going to just answer a couple of questions here. Okay. What's the difference between your mushrooms and host defense mushrooms is the first question. Well, they're definitely different. Host defense mushrooms are a primordia and a mycelium. That is the underground organism part of the mushrooms, and ours are a fruiting body. That's the biggest difference. The extraction process is a little different. For many of ours, we have a dual extract or a type of extraction where if there's alcohol soluble compounds, we're getting that, which means that you're going to see on Harmonic Arts mushrooms, you're going to see measurable amounts of terpene groups. And in the case of like cordyceps, you'll see measurable amounts of cordycepine and adenosine and other active compounds. You won't find those in the primordia and in the mycelium. So you might get great levels of concentration in the beta glucans and the branch polysaccharides, but you get more diversity of those compounds in the fruiting body, as well as you're going to get a lot more advanced chemistry. So that's the bigger difference. The other difference is that host defense is grown in the US, and that is great. There's nothing wrong. The challenge is that they're not growing full fruiting bodies. There's nobody really in the States doing that. Our mushrooms are grown, or at least our reishi in this case, is grown in China. Some are grown in Mongolia and Siberia of other mushrooms, but it's grown in the best way possible. There are lots of different types you can find. So even just the difference between our mushrooms and some other mushrooms that might come from China is vastly different. We've got, in reishi's case, the traditional wood that reishi grows on to grow the most active compounds is a basswood or dangwood, it's called, or dawnwood. And so we use the dawnwood only. We use dawnwood exclusive reishi, which means it produces higher amounts of active compounds. That's also harvested on the same mountain that many of our mushroom farms are grown on, and it's high elevation grown reishi under shade tents. Really beautiful, high quality extraction process and high quality chemistry. Not every reishi in China is grown like this. Most of them, in fact, aren't. So one of the differences between us and some of the other companies that are sourcing from Asia is we've actually done a lot of research, tried thousands of different samples. I know I've tried like at least 2-3 dozen companies have sent me mushrooms of different types, even more than that over the years. And I've tried them all, every single kind I can. And really, for vertical transparency, I actually had to go to China and really see the farms for myself. So we have some YouTube videos on that. We have some great content from our time there to really understand the research behind the active chemistry, how the universities have proved out different types of substrates for growing better quality compounds, and really just make sure we have the best quality mushrooms in the world. And the thing is, and this is a whole side topic between American grown and Chinese grown, because the Chinese grown mushrooms, well, in general, people are afraid of China in general. It's just like an issue. And at the same time, they've done all the research. They spend millions and millions of dollars on these. They consume far more in volume of mushrooms than anyone else on the planet. And so you can find the best quality there too. You just have to know where to look and what to look for. So actually, their cultivation techniques are far superior in most cases, and their extraction techniques. So when you get a really good quality extract, you know, for us, we third-party test them. We also get heavy metal reports. We get pesticide residue reports. We get organic certifications updated every 6 months. You know, we blind test them afterwards, so we know we're getting the best quality. So I have very much confidence that this is the best quality in the world. And part of the problem for me is I was working with some American-grown mycelium-based mushrooms for a long time. Harmonic Arts did sell a product similar to Host Defense and all the other mushroom companies that are American grown. And there's nothing wrong with those. Those products are great for their beta glucan profile. But the challenge is that you just taste it and it tastes like a bland wood. Almost every single one that I tried tasted the same, whether it was chaga, reishi, cordyceps, lion's mane, they all tasted the same. They had this really bland mycelium flavor. Whereas when you try a proper fruiting body extract, wow, is there ever a difference? It is potent. It's got those strong bitter notes in the case of reishi. It's got unique coloration. You can really use your own organoleptic taste testing to determine the chemistry in it. So you can actually just prove to yourself, wow, this is far more active in its chemical profile. And so that was my blind testing. And it made me have to pivot entirely to the direction we went with mushrooms, which is why I took in dozens upon dozens of company samples to really just find out. Anyway, okay, a little bit of a side wind there. Next question. Mushroom safety and pregnancy. So breastfeeding children, what's the deal really with this? Is there certain ones to avoid? I would say you don't want a lot of cordyceps. You don't need it during pregnancy. I know lots of women who used chaga tea as their main immune support during pregnancy. Now, you have to be careful drinking too much chaga tea. It can be hard on the body if you just drink chaga tea all the time. There have been a few what I call chagavores out there who have just gotten obsessed with chaga tea and ended up with some kidney issues from drinking chaga tea daily for years. Not a good idea to do anything like that. Wax and wane always with herbal medicine. Take a break. Typically, you know, most of the mushrooms are quite safe during pregnancy though. I know a lot of people who have used the 5 mushroom blend as a primary support for their pregnancy immunity, because a lot of the immune herbs are counterindicated during pregnancy. You can't do your oil oreganos and golden seals and that kind of thing. So mushrooms become a really useful tool that way. I give my children medicinal mushrooms, have for a long time, no problem that way. Reishi, chaga, turkey tail are the most active medicinal ones. If you're looking for like immune support, that it would be really fine for breastfeeding and children. Lion's mane is not as immune supportive. It's much more neurosupportive, digestive supportive, a little bit anti-inflammatory, good for, yeah, mylar sheath. We're going to get into that. But yeah, so the 5 mushroom is fine. I would say that they're one of the safest, gentlest things you can do during pregnancy, but don't overdo cordyceps, only because it like opens the bronchioles, gets better oxygenation of the blood, but it also like stimulates the adrenals a little bit, gives some more energy. It's not necessary, but it's not really unsafe either. There's plenty of other things that are, yeah. Okay, thank you, Stella, for that question. Jim is asking about horsehoof conch, the tinder conch. Does it have any medicinal benefits? Yes, that is a great medicinal mushroom. It's widely found, especially in central North America. I've seen lots of people make that into a decoction, and it does a really good job as an anti-inflammatory tea. It's been useful for parasites. I've seen that mushroom in itself is just a great immune support. It also is a good preservant, so it'll help food go from going bad. Typically, if you add a tinder conch or red belted polypore to a soup, it'll help the soup last longer. So this was First Nations wisdom for keeping meat stews viable and edible for a longer period of time, is they would add some of these conchs like the tinder conch in. Tinder conch is also, as the name tinder, for fire making. It's a fire starting mushroom. It's also got a bit of a mosquito repellent and black fly repellent quality, so you can use it as a smudge to repel insects. Yeah, there's a few other good things about that one. It's a great mushroom. And there's plenty of these. This is something I'll just maybe one more quick sidebar here is there's lots of conchs in your forest. Companies like Harmonic Arts or Host Defense or any of these companies that support you with medicinal mushrooms, they're great. But if you can connect in with your own wild mushrooms and you can extract them properly, that's better. It really is, because you're getting in a bit of fifth element from the mushrooms themselves. You're connecting with the spirit of the organism. You're interacting with your medicine. You're adding your own medicine to it by doing that interaction process. And it's acclimatized to your local environment. There are lots of benefits to reishi, but you know, this is Ganoderma lucidium. There's plenty of other Ganodermas here in North America that are great too. I would consider Harmonic Arts as like insurance. It's good to have insurance to make sure that your immune system stays up to par. And some of the other benefits we're going to talk about here, but really, if you can connect in with your own mushrooms, I really recommend you do that, even if it's just a little part of it, even if it's just a mushroom that you have as a shrine on your office, in your office as like a beautiful mushroom shrine, and you take Harmonic Arts products for your immune health, the connection has more than just a placebo effect. It has this exchange and interaction with your environment, which is a huge part of immunity. And I just can't say enough about that. A lot of us live in cities or we live in environments where we're a little disconnected from our natural world. Get out and reconnect with the natural world. Make an effort to do so. This is a huge part of your resilience on this planet. Okay, so Cindy's asking about probiotic function of mushrooms. Well, one of the biggest benefits is actually prebiotic, which is food for our probiotics, really. And the prebiotic function, because they're polysaccharides, they actually work to help stabilize our other medium chain sugars, like your fructooligosaccharides, like all those kinds of things that are other prebiotics. They stabilize, they're anti-inflammatory, they work really good for encouraging better quality probiotic growth in our gut. That's a huge part of their immune support, is actually that. So I'll answer one more question, maybe two more questions. Stephanie's asking about cordyceps. Yeah, what will cordyceps grow on? Well, typically, depending on the cordyceps militaris is the one that's now most commonly used because it produces better fruiting bodies. It's a more aggressive cordyceps, which means it is easier to grow than the Cordyceps sinensis, which is the one that was originally found in the high Himalayas. And Cordyceps militaris has, well, because it produces bigger amounts of fruiting bodies, it produces more of those active compounds, the cordycepine and the andosine that I was talking about. But like I mentioned, those are only found in the fruiting body. They're not found in the mycelium underground. So you really want to make sure you got a fruiting body. Cordyceps grows on wheat. It grows on rye. It'll grow on rice. It'll grow on soybeans. So those are a couple of substrates. The substrate we use for our cordyceps was, again, part of the reason I was studying or going to interview and check out the Hung Sao University and speak to their master, I think Dr. Ling was his name, really awesome mycologist who had developed a substrate base with a bunch of different nutrients and a protein base of soybean and rice as a kind of a hybrid combination to grow the cordyceps that we work with at Harmonic Arts. And the reason is because in their testing of I think he had like 95 different, in these little tubes, substrates for growing cordyceps they had tested on, and from corn to all kinds of different things. And they even grew cordyceps on maca. They tried to grow it on like a maca base to try and advance the chemistry. Anyway, they found that this was one of the best forms that was able to produce the most active chemistry, was a soybean and rice with a bunch of different nutrients in there, different brands, cotton seed, I think in there. There's a few different nutritional pieces they add in, some ash or some minerals to really just enhance that. Yeah. Okay. Last question I'm going to answer right now, and is how much of a problem are heavy metals in, say, shaggy manes? Yeah, found in suburban Vancouver and South Surrey. Yeah, I will say this is one of the challenges. Shaggy mane's a great mushroom. It's edible, but it grows in all our urban environments. So it will concentrate a little bit in the urban environment. You know, you have potential of concentrating some of the heavy metals. I've definitely myself eaten shaggy manes out of those environments, and I'm going to maybe give a little out of the city park. I've tried it. You do want to make sure with shaggy mane two things. One is you don't consume any alcohol with it. It really shuts down the biochemical pathway in the liver by detoxing alcohol. So it can be actually quite dangerous to drink alcohol and shaggy mane. This is a very scary thing. The other thing is you got to eat it like right away, because it turns into mush and it becomes inky cap, which is more of an ink. And you can actually make an ink with it where you take the mush mushroom, add a little bit of alcohol to it, strain off the fibrous bits, and you make an ink that you can use to paint with. It's a really cool artist's ink with inky caps. But what I will say is that I want to bring this back to, like, look, we live on a polluted planet, people. We have heavy metals everywhere. We have radioactive isotopes, toxins in our environment, microplastics in our ocean. We're dealing with a lot of challenges here. If you caught the last webinar that Angie and I did, it was on cleansing. And I want to invite you to be more resilient, which means, yes, you're going to find that your food over the next decade has got microtoxins in it. It's just going to happen. You can't always eat the highest quality organic. You can try, but do a cleanse. Cleanse every year. Build your resilience through using your own biochemical pathways to detox your system. So having a little bit of heavy metals, and I'm not saying it's a good thing, but in your diet is something you can deal with. You have the technology, which is to do a liver, kidney, blood, digestive cleanse once a spring or spring and fall. Do that work, and your body will flush through a lot of these toxins. And so I just think that sometimes our paranoia of it stops us from doing things, when actually, if we realize that our body is designed to deal with toxic load, if we treat it properly, and if we use the technology we have, the understanding of how to heal our bodies to actually move a lot of these toxins out of us. I think that's really important and gets forgotten about. So yes, Vivian, I will say that heavy metals are a real thing. They do concentrate in some mushrooms. Shaggy mane, there's potential if it's you're in a city environment, just be careful. But a little one-off shaggy mane mushroom, I would not be concerned about. Be much more concerned about eating tuna, twice a week. Anyway, the thing is also one thing to think about with heavy metals is things that produce fast tissues don't concentrate. So when you look at fish, the bioaccumulators are the big old fish, not the small little fish. Same thing with seaweeds. Yeah, seaweeds basically remediate heavy metals from the ocean, but they don't accumulate them because they grow so fast, right? Really fast. So the fruiting bodies of the shaggy mane are probably not going to be as concentrated as some other things, but they might be. So anyway. All right, that's it for my Q&A. I've been kept you guys on this Reishi slide for a good 20 minutes. Thanks for staying with me. I will answer some more Q&A in a bit. But let's talk about Reishi. This is the Grand Poobah. This is the wizard, the Merlin, the Gandalf of the mushroom world, the Buddha, the monk. This one was classically actually taken by monks as a way of grounding and being an adaptogen in that sense, to really help ground the body, to protect the mind. We also see in China there is ample folklore around this process, around people who are in their head or thinking too much or I'm unable to make decisions, grounding with Reishi, and spiritual enlightenment. This mushroom was considered one of spiritual light in that sense, and longevity. One of the stories from China, again, comes to the emperor looking for soma, looking for the elixir of life, and thinking it was mercury, when the actual recipe was a combination of mercury with Reishi. Again, I was just talking about heavy metals. The mercury toxicity ended up killing him. If he had to mix it with Reishi, it would have pulled out much of the toxic load, because this mushroom has an anti-radiation property. It has the ability to chelate out heavy metals. We put it in our BioShield tincture, which is another one of my favorites for like EMF damage and for radiation toxicity and for living on a polluted planet. Well, Reishi is a key ingredient in our BioShield tincture because it helps to really remediate that. In that case, that tincture has some greens, some seaweeds, some adaptogens, and some mushrooms, and just is an amazing support that way. Next thing about Reishi that I really like is not just its grounding capacity and its ability to pull out toxic load, but the fact that it really is actually good for the whole cardiovascular system. So we see a lot of people taking Reishi have lowering cholesterol, having stronger heart. One of the things that energetically, Reishi is from a Chinese perspective, from a TCM perspective, it's ruled by Shen, which is the spirit body, and it's housed in the heart. So the idea of bringing you into your heart and out of your head is part of the Reishi folklore. And so this mushroom has all these beautiful stories around how it actually works with cholesterol and heart health and heart palpitations and all that kind of stuff. We also see that being heavy in all of these branched polysaccharides, it's got that immunomodulating property. And that is really common amongst most of these mushrooms, is that they have really advanced polysaccharide chemistry. And that means that if your immune system is low, they'll bring it up. If your immune system is too high, overfiring, autoimmune, they'll bring it down. So I've been taking Reishi for a long time, but definitely doubled up since just kind of getting over COVID. This last week, Reishi has been a huge helper for me because, and same with cordyceps, just opening up the lungs. But really, Reishi is more grounding. My head was super foggy and just really grounding me back into my body in a big way, and supporting with antioxidant and immune modulating. So just really helping support my body. I found, COVID, from an energetic perspective, I got a lot of what is called toxic heat, which is that heat rising and headaches. See a lot of people get similar symptoms or toxic heat stuck in the stomach. This is grounding and bringing downward moving energy and cooling. Reishi's cooling in nature. So really like it that way. It supports healthy cell growth. It's got lots of studies done on Reishi around cancer. This is one of the big things about mushrooms that I think is so amazing, is if you actually go to like PubMed and type Reishi in, I don't know, somebody do it right now and check it into the comments. I'm sure you're going to get hundreds of studies, if not thousands of studies that are like it's just heavy duty amount of research done on these mushrooms. And the reason why is because it sort of was mysterious that it had all these magic bullet benefits, like supporting the immune system, antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, just good for cancer, supportive of, like, for a while there in the 90s when AIDS really was breaking out in Africa, and it was a huge thing. There was massive research being done on medicinal mushrooms and clinical studies done in Africa on working with them and HIV, and lots of good results. You know, we see a lot of people consume mushrooms like reishi when they are in lowered, compromised states. I find as you get older, this is one of those mushrooms that is helpful for increasing your sort of resilience. There's a few studies done now on not just reishi, but on chaga and on phalinus mushroom, and looking at like how do these mushrooms, can these mushrooms increase the length of telomeres, which is sort of our cell resilience to rebuild quality new cells. So our biological age is now considered to be measured in the length of your telomeres, and those are continually shrinking. Well, some of the science is showing that extracts from some of these high-hitting mushrooms, the three that I saw that were studied were reishi, phalinus, and chaga, showing some results, not 100% conclusive, but results in that they can actually extend the length of telomeres and really enhance our biological age to make us younger. This mushroom was considered one of the mushrooms of spiritual potency and longevity. And so, yeah, there's some history to that. Whether or not that's true or just folklore, what I can say is that the chemistry in reishi is profound, and its ability to bring us back into our body, to calm down palpitations, whether it's heart, whether it's lungs, whether it's in our mind. So many people have seen massive benefits for ADD or for insomnia from circular thinking in their minds with reishi. So I've seen a lot of people with asthma, part of that like antihistamine and allergy response, but also just calming down the lungs in general. So probably my favorite mushroom. And at the Herb conference this year, I'm going to go really deep into reishi. I've decided to challenge myself at the Herb conference and do a Ganoderma deep dive and talk about all the different strains of reishi and spend an hour talking about this one mushroom in particular and look at some of the science and back up a lot of what I'm talking about here. So another quick plug. Check us out at herbconference.com if you want to find out more about the Herb conference in June. It's like 2-3 weeks away from the time of this recording. And Harmonic Arts is a major sponsor. We've got a coupon code HA22, which gets you money off your ticket. Okay, next mushroom. Let's talk about chaga. This one's really blown up. This has got a lot of fame, I'll say. Biggest reason is that chaga is tasty. You know, it tastes good. It's one of the best tasting mushrooms. Reishi is a bit bitter, whereas chaga has just these vanillic acids in it, and it tastes kind of like a vanilla soda is what I find. Or it's got some deeper flavors that mirror chocolate and coffee. You know, it's just a robust, yummy flavor. It's got saponins in it, so soap-like compounds that when you mix them with, like I was mentioning, doing that butter drink where I blend it with butter or fat or cream, it goes really well. They blend in really well. So we often like chaga tea as part of our elixir bases, blending in one of our, like I would like to do our 5-mushroom drinking chocolate with a chaga tea base, or Activate was really good with a chaga tea base. Kickstart, amazing with a chaga tea base. And then blend in coconut oil or ghee or whatever fat you want to. The saponins in it really help emulsify those fats and work really well, and the fats slow down the absorption. But the thing that's so good about chaga, and it's the bottom point on the slide, it's my favorite thing, is that it stabilizes blood sugars. This is huge for those of us who, like myself, I've learned over the years that I don't think digestion is my biggest strength. I'll say I've got lots of strengths, but my digestive system it's not bad, but I said I want to I notice it. So to me, one of my strategies has been, I don't eat as many meals. I don't keep my stomach always full, churning snacks over and over again. I like to eat 1 to 2 really solid meals a day and take big fasts. So intermittent fasting has been a huge part of my own health strategy, and it works really well for me. But having, rather than a snack, having a tea like chaga that can help stabilize blood sugars in between meals has been a primo part of my experience. I also find if I'm working on the computer, drinking chaga can help me, and usually chaga reishi is the combination I like, to ground me a little bit, but also to stabilize my blood sugars so that I'm thinking properly and keeping from getting hangry. So that's one of my favorite qualities of it, is it tastes good and it stabilizes blood sugar. Makes a great replacement for those people who like coffee for that same reason, to keep that energy level going. Chaga is a great base, and chaga and kickstart, awesome. The other thing about chaga that's probably where it's got its most fame is its antioxidant profile. It's got something called SOD, or superoxide dismutase. This is a powerful free radical scavenger that really cuts down on a lot of free radical damage in the body. So we produce this in our body already, but chaga is just super loaded with SOD. And so that makes it one of the most potent antioxidants we've ever found on planet Earth. So when you use something called the ORAC scale, chaga is the #1 thing we've ever put on the ORAC scale, which is a way we measure antioxidant reactive capacities. And yeah, so I'll say its antioxidant potential is the highest of anything we've ever found. But most of that stays to the digestive tract, which is where a lot of our inflammation is. That's where our like cell warfare is happening, where most of our cells die off. Fastest dying cells are our epithelial, or our digestive tract lining, and our fingertips, right? And so, yeah, we have a lot of oxidative damage in those places. In Russia, there's a pharmaceutical called bifungin, which is an anti-cancer pharmaceutical made out of chaga. So there's been a lot of studies done in Russia, again, in Siberian chaga. It's pretty famous around the north. This mushroom grows on birch trees. So, I spent some time in Finland, been there a couple of times for the biohacking events, and they are all about chaga. They love it. It's a huge part of their culture, and it's a big part of their kind of health sovereignty path, is using chaga mushroom. Here in Canada and in the sort of eastern United States, there's lots of great places for chaga. The problem is, the more hype it gets, the more people go out and harvest it. And some of these chaga stands might be under threat. But this is not fully true, because a part of that is that chaga it grows on birch trees, which are a short-lived tree. And these trees reproduce really fast. Birch tree is a very aggressive growing, fast growing tree that dies young. Chaga actually helps it live longer. They've shown a symbiotic relationship with the chaga. It's not a parasite on the birch. It actually helps the birch not get birch polypore and other fungal infections, and it helps it live longer and strengthens the tree itself. So it's a health strategy for the tree. We also see that people who are professional chaga harvesters will harvest parts of a chaga, and then they'll sprinkle it around, and they'll start to see and encourage new growth on other trees. So there's lots of ways to actually encourage new growth. In Russia, one of the ways they do it is they actually take a machete type knife, and they'll harvest chaga, and then they'll on trees nearby, they'll make little marks in the tree, and then sprinkle a lot of the outer black part around the tree, and that'll be help the mycelium encourage underground and start to produce in those wounds, because chaga grows in the wounds of tree and helps protect them that way. So, and they've seen success, because now you've got these large forests that are being protected as non-timber forest product forests because of the chaga. And so that's a great way to, again, help preserve forests. So there's potentials here, to actually make the chaga industry one of those ones where you actually save forests, not harm forests, because of its value in land value. So non-timber forest products, huge part. Mushrooms are a big part of that, and I think they're maybe underappreciated, the true value of them, because some of these intact ecosystems only have a few reishi, but they're just such powerful medicine. Okay, Other things in this mushroom on the outer black part has a lot of terpenes and betulinic acid. So really concentrated mushroom for its antiviral qualities. But also it's the betulinic acid is another antioxidant support. There's polyphenols in this mushroom. So you have some of these anti-allergy kind of, and just like potent protectors of damage and inflammation in our body. So a lot of that is really what it comes down to, is that we rust, essentially, we oxidize, we get inflamed. Most of our health issues actually come down to inflammation and blockage and stagnation. And so some of these mushrooms that have like anti-inflammatory qualities and antioxidant qualities, they do a lot just in that in itself, let alone the immunomodulating properties from the polysaccharides that really support strengthening the overall immune system. So this mushroom's powerful, probably I'm going to say definitely in the top 3 mushrooms on the planet as far as medicinal qualities, between reishi, lion's mane, and chaga. I think those are probably the 3 that are most well, I don't know, it's hard. I mean, turkey tail in Asia is massive, way more than lion's mane. Lion's mane is massive here in North America. Chaga is massive in Northern Europe. Reishi is massive in Asia, but it is tier 2. It's starting to become. I'll say I really like this as my tea base, and it's one of my favorite mushrooms, but I do exercise caution. You do have the ability to rebrew chaga tea like 5 times, so I highly recommend you do that. You rebrew it multiple times. You don't just brew it once. And the chaga extract is powerful, and that's where you're going to get both our chaga extract tincture. One thing I like about our tincture is it's like black. It's so dark. And I've tried a few other chaga tinctures on the market, and I'm just really stoked about the potency of ours. So I have utmost confidence that if you try our chaga tincture, you're going to be like, wow, this is powerful. And same with the powder, really dark, rich, full chaga flavor. We got a couple of stores. I know the Big Carrot in Toronto, their juice bar, that's what they use for their juice, for their chaga tea. They just make a chaga tea with the dual extracted powder from Harmonic Arts. And it's great. It's a great base for a bunch of things they do there. Anyway, it's a good idea. Okay, next mushroom, lion's mane. This one, as far as sales go, is the most popular mushroom now in North America. Only took about 5-6 years for that to happen. Before that, chaga was like massively the most popular mushroom. And then before that, reishi was massively the most popular mushroom. Now, lion's mane, everybody wants that edge. Everybody's looking for the edge on, a lot of us have tech jobs, or we work on our computers, or we use our brain power more than our body power. So nerve factors and memory and cognition and focus, these are superpowers of the 21st century. These are things that everyone's looking for. So, lion's mane has become sort of the pinnacle of that. And some of the studies done originally were on like neurodegenerative diseases like multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's. And these were the original studies that were like, wow, wait a minute, there's a serious ability to protect the myelin sheath of the nervous system and to stimulate new nerve growth factors. With degenerative nerve disease, for a long time, we believed that people didn't grow back new nerves. And it wasn't until like research was done on some of these things like lion's mane that could actually regenerate new nerve growth factors that we recognize we can regrow back nerve cells properly and repair the myelin sheath. And this mushroom just blew up. Now, I'll say that this is not what it was originally considered. The folklore in China considers this is called monkey's head mushroom. There's another one here called bear's tooth and bear's head mushroom that are both in the Hericium family that grow here in North America. Monkey head mushroom, Hericium erinaceus, that one is our traditional lion's mane, and it was originally considered the happy mushroom. So it wasn't for that cognitive function, memory, and that focus and edge. It was for happiness, considered to encourage a happier health and reduce anxiety. The other thing is that it was usually consumed as a soup, as a food mushroom, and it would be for a happy belly too. If you had belly troubles or a nervous tummy or anxiety that way, it would support that. So it's interesting that it kind of turned into this major factor in North America as being for cognitive function, because that actually took a whole lot of studying before it became recognized as having that. And the reality is it's been used for centuries now as just a slight antidepressant, good for the digestive nervous system and digestive, nerves in general. Now, though, we're seeing dementia and Alzheimer's and other kind of neurodiversity issues, autism, and even the ADD spectrum, that whole spectrum. People are looking at lion's mane as a little bit of hopium, we'll say, because not everything that it's being used for is what it's been studied for. But, you know, it's getting that fame and people are seeing the results. You now see lion's mane as a massive trend in the Silicon Valley tech industry. And then even in the microdosing with psilocybin industry, it's pairing it with lion's mane has become, for microdosing, has become the thing to do in some ways as a nootropic support. And I can see the benefits of that because lion's mane really stimulates new nerve growth factors and actually supports the health overall, not just stimulating new ways of thinking, which is what microdosing can do. So actually supporting the physiology, I think that's great. I think that's really important. Reishi, lion's mane, those would be the two I would put together if I was looking at that. Not that I'm suggesting that, but yeah, things to consider. Anyway, biggest nootropic we know of right now, huge potential for this growing evolution of our consciousness because we live in our heads. Literally, a lot of us are spending more time on screens than ever. And you know, the majority of work time is spent on screens now, especially with COVID. I mean, the amount of Zoom calls, the amount of pajama pants interviews I've done, it's surreal. So yeah, make sure that you get out and dig in the earth. Don't just take lion's mane to improve your cognitive function. Get out and ground, go for walks, forest bathe, connect, do this work. It's so crucial to your health. Super important. And I can't say it enough. But lion's mane is one that will hopefully help give you that edge and improve cognitive function. I like it. I'm actually growing some lion's mane. I've got a couple of those lion's mane bags downstairs. Got about 25 lion's mane logs. They haven't produced anything yet. They're still really young. But yeah, I'm growing lion's mane and reishi here on my little piece of paradise. Okay. Let's see. Next mushroom is turkey tail. This one's powerful. Really love turkey tail mushroom. It's what we call the hiker's mushroom because it's everywhere. It is on all kinds of forest paths. It's in the woods. It's our most common local medicinal that's easy to identify. We see this all over the world. Like, it's very aggressive species. It eats almost any kind of wood. And it grows in all kinds of forests. It's not just like temperate rainforests like I live here in the West Coast, but you'll see this in many different kinds of forests, in drier lands, in wetter lands. So this is probably the most likely medicinal you'll find. And it tastes pretty good. It's not bad. It's got, you know, a fairly bland, neutral flavor, but it goes really well in. My favorite thing to do with turkey tail is honestly to put it in soup stocks and to put it into soups. As a sort of bone broth piece. I like to add it to any bone broth, but also if I'm going to make a vegetarian version of a bone broth, medicinal mushrooms are a huge part of that. And turkey tail is one of the ones I like to work with a lot. It's rubbery, so you got to break it down. You got to make a decoction, simmer it up, or you can get like a concentrated extract either in a tincture or a tea or a powder. Now, this mushroom gained most of its fame via being studied heavily with chemotherapy and cancer treatment. In the 80s, this mushroom blew up, like literally in Asia mostly, because that's where all the studies are done. That's where they actually spend money on studies, not just marketing. Not that I'm jaded, but here in North America, we do such little actual academia and much more marketing. But yeah, there's a compound called PSK, polysaccharide crestine, another one called PSP, polysaccharide peptine, that were shown to have very significant results around supporting patients going through chemotherapy. And like dozens of studies done on this, up to 400% better recovery rate from the chemo. Huge results around supporting the body getting over cancer. There's lots and lots of anecdotal evidence of people taking turkey tail and it working with helping their cancer. It's the #1 reached for mushroom for this thing. But we also see that it works in conjunction and is safe to use with traditional or conventional allopathic treatments. So here's one that can be utilized and is being utilized very heavily in North America. Well, not in North America as much, in Asia, but in North America by the those people who are self-treating, they're reaching to turkey tail. A lot of them are. And I recommend, because a lot of the studies do show that a multi-mushroom is better. My recommendation for any kind of treatment that way, and I'm not going to say treatment, I guess, is if you're looking to support the health of someone going through that or yourself, is that you would go with a 5-mushroom blend. So you have a multi-mushroom blend and a turkey tail together, and you'd double the dose. If it was my body, I'd be taking 2 to 4 times what's on the recommended dosage if I was going through cancer treatment, or if that was an actual issue in my life. I'm not going to follow the recommended dose. I'm going to double it up with stuff like mushrooms, because I know that the macro dosing actually gives you far more of these compounds for a much deeper therapeutic benefit. And there's very low LDLs, which are like or very high LDLs, lethal dosage. You need to consume like huge amounts of these mushrooms to get anywhere near that, which is just not going to happen. So they're very safe. Also for elderly and young people. Okay, one more thing, maybe there's a couple more things about turkey tail. I'm going to actually move a little faster because I'm recognizing that I'm running out of time already. The antiviral compounds. This is huge. This one has been studied for HIV, and it's also studied for hepatitis, hep C. Seen a lot of significant benefits shown to be supporting hep C. And so that would be the mushroom I'd look to that way. A lot of people consider this to be the mushroom for liver, whereas Reishi's for heart, cordyceps for adrenals and lungs, turkey tail or lion's mane for brain and digestion, chaga for digestion, and I guess just overall antioxidant, turkey tail, liver. Yeah, if you're to give it a center of gravity, it is just looking at the doctrine of signature or correspondence, which is how it shows up in nature and how that is similar to how it works in the body. This mushroom digests any tree. It breaks down all kinds of chemistry. It grows in abundance and in many like small shapes that are this versicolor, is transitional color. It has a very similar to a liver type energy in its detoxification of the natural environment, but also in the pathways in our body and breaking up congestion and stagnation. So just from a doctrine of correspondence, we see that, but we also see that liver health in general, this is the antiviral detoxification mushroom. So also great for gut health. I mean, all these mushrooms have like immune modulating properties and anti-inflammatory effects on the gut membrane. So really useful for that prebiotic function, but also just if you're one of these people who have a sensitive digestive tract, or get like pain, cramping, gluten intox or gluten allergies, medicinal mushrooms might be a really good strategy for you to start to build back and strengthen your gut lining. Okay, next one is cordyceps. This one is great. And I think in coming years, we're going to see cordyceps take the stage. We got lion's mane in front and center right now. One of the places when I went to China, one of the things I went for was the International Medicinal Mushroom Conference, which happens every 2 years, although I don't think they did do it again in 2021 because of COVID, somewhere in the world. Anyway, there were like 63 countries there presenting papers on the newest clinical and scientific research around medicinal mushrooms. And probably the biggest rage that most people were excited about, if like sort of there was a buzz at the conference, it was on cordyceps. Lots of new science coming out on cordyceps, really cool mushroom. And multi-mushroom strain. Like one of the things that was neat is hacking apart the DNA of cordyceps and looking at that there's so much genetic material there. And what we think of as a mushroom is actually like a whole colony of different organisms. And the epithelial layer on the cordyceps mushroom is very diverse in its genetic material that is not just cordyceps itself. So really unique. One of the studies was done on 73 different types of cordyceps, and so many types of cordyceps that we've never studied yet, and the benefits we don't know, but we're seeing a lot more around cancer treatment as well with cordyceps, and significant benefits. One study showed how they could tease out different chemistry based on the substrates, and they were able to tease out high levels of ganodermic acid, which is in reishi, and one of the terpenes in reishi, they could actually tease out of cordyceps. Also ginsenosides in ginseng, they were able to tease out of cordyceps. So neat stuff. The biggest thing though that cordyceps is known for is its ability to really increase stamina, energy, support cortisol balance and adrenal balance, and work with adrenal burnout and fatigue, but also really support oxygenation in the cells. So cordyceps is known as a bronchial dilator. It helps to oxygenate the bronchial and get more blood oxygenation levels, meaning that it can help with exercise because your blood is more oxygenated, therefore creating less of that burn and that kind of lactic acid buildup in the muscles. So that really can support that way. Better breathing, longer endurance, lower cortisol levels, just like everything around that. And of course, within that stamina, endurance, energy, it ends up boosting libido and fertility. You know, there's a number of, one of the studies actually that I saw at the conference was done in Africa, because there were people from Africa there showing a study on he was an animal doctor, and they had studied cordyceps with various animals. And one of the ones just with chickens, they were able to prove and show, anyway, from a number of results, that they had up to 30% better or more eggs the chickens produced when they had cordyceps as part of their diet. That's massive. So for a hungry population in Africa, giving cordyceps to the chickens to produce 30% more eggs, well, now instead of a dozen, you've got what, 18. So huge amount. I mean, I think that's really profound, that to produce more fertility, literally. But yeah, we do see that cordyceps, is one for increasing libido. And so increasing that kind of energy in general. Really what that means is it makes you more embodied. It's not that you're more like sexual cravings. It's much more embodied, blood flow physically here, and energetic, and have the capacity to want to put resources in that direction. So anyway, powerful mushroom. There are some antiviral, some anti-tumoral effects. Just a really unique one. I like cordyceps and reishi together for allergies. I like cordyceps and lion's mane together for, actually I like cordyceps, reishi, lion's mane, I think is better. I put reishi with almost everything though, if it were me. Cordyceps is definitely becoming one of the more favorite mushrooms of mine, because I like the fact that it is helping with adrenal burnout, and my tendency is to go. So I really like cordyceps, and it grounds me with reishi. That's my 2 cents. All right, I'm gonna just do a couple of more quick slides here, and then I'm gonna answer some Q&A. So I did talk about this already, what the difference is between some of our mushrooms, and maybe I really don't love to talk about competition in that sense. I like to think of this as co-opetition. We're all trying to support health in the best way we can. The thing that's really good quality though out of Harmonic Arts is, one, we've done the research and the studies and the testing, and we're we understand mushrooms deeply, and I've tried every sample from every different company I can possibly get my hands on, and really understand the chemistry, knowing that what's most important is, not just polysaccharides and beta glucan, but diversity of polysaccharides and beta glucan. So not just like there's a lot of this one chemistry, it's like there's actually a wider spectrum of it. So really full spectrum is what you get out of fruiting bodies. And then versus mycelium, you don't get a full spectrum of the polysaccharides even. You get lots of them, but in a lower spectrum in the diversity. Something that makes, and that's really, it goes back to the anecdotal evidence and the history that like we consumed mushrooms, not underground mycelium for a long time. So just intuitively, it also makes more sense when you look at every other species on this planet. Mushrooms are the sexual reproductive part of the organism. And you see that the most advanced chemistry of all plants is in its seeds, in its flowers, in its pollen. Yes, there's great chemistry in roots. Many plants concentrate down into their roots, but their most like unique chemistry is often in their reproductive parts, and mushrooms are no different. Same with us, we're no different. Look at our most advanced chemistry is is used for reproduction. Not all in the reproductive parts, but like our ability to survive, our ability to like, all of it has to do about, everything's about procreation. So we see that's where the chemistry goes and where we really invest the most. Same as with mushrooms. At Harmonic Arts, we don't add fillers. It's not diluted. Long history of use around these ones, and really the highest quality mushrooms you can find. Okay, dosage. Let's look at dosage here. One of the big things is really you can take more than this concentrated mushroom dosage. This is what our NPNs, our natural health product numbers, allow us to say. But if you look at studies, 1 to 2 grams of crude equivalency is a maintenance dose, but many of the studies are done on 3 grams, 4 grams, even 6 grams in some cases of crude equivalency. So if you're looking at cancer treatment, if you're looking at something like that, you might want to hero dose and take twice as much as this. But this is what I like about the concentrated mushroom powders is you only need a 1/4 teaspoon to get a regular maintenance dose, which means you can take a tiny bit and put it in your tea and you're going to get a good quality, good viability. Or I like to put mushrooms in people's coffee. Especially those people who are allergic to health food stores. Get them with the medicinal mushrooms because it tastes good. It's got umami flavoring. It works well with the coffee. So my tea is like never ending here. That's great. I'll also say with a tincture, because of the alcohol, there's just a little bit in it. You're not going to get too much alcohol in it, but some people are concerned about alcohol. So I will say you get very, very little. There's much more alcohol in a glass of wine than there is in a bottle of tincture. So just think of it that way. That bottle of tincture is equivalent to your glass of wine or less. If you drink a glass of wine, well, don't be concerned about your tinctures. It's only people who have had like alcohol issues in the past who are recovering alcoholics that I might be a little more concerned for. Even children, my kids have taken tinctures for a long time, and sometimes we put them in hot water or apple juice, and there's very, very little that way. Anyway, the nice thing about the alcohol is that it extracts it well and it drives it deeper into the system faster. So you really get great absorption with a tincture. They're convenient and you get great absorption and you taste them. So your body sets up for success for the chemistry. Our powders, like I said, are extracted in these are the ratios. Lowest one 7:1 in lion's mane, highest one 12:1 in reishi, which really just means that you've got 12 grams going into that 1 gram of extract. Okay, so concentrated mushrooms, this is how they come and from Harmonic Arts. One of these are the 100-gram jars. You're needing 1 gram a day. That's 100 days worth of medicinal mushrooms. The nice thing about this is it's the most economical way to get advanced chemistry and high quality mushrooms. So I just highly recommend, the concentrated powders. If you can comply, if you can find ways to use them, put them in your coffee, your tea, or make a syrup with them for your soda, put them in oatmeal, put them in baking. If you can find ways to use them, this is the easiest way. Otherwise, I think the tinctures are easier, and they're a little better absorption, but I will say that they're more expensive as far as like crude equivalency because you're getting less, but they're awesome, and they're really rich. I really enjoy our mushroom tinctures, and I would put them up against any other tincture on the market and just really compare side to side and be like, wow, now this is some of the most concentrated tinctures. Well, I know they are. So I invite you to try. Okay, another way you can work with our mushrooms is in our elixirs. So Harmonic Arts has a great line of elixirs. These are basically hot tonic drinks. All of them have different mushrooms in them. Elevate and Matcha Mind are lion's mane based. Kickstart is a chaga based. Golden Milk is a turkey tail. Activate is chaga and reishi. And 5 mushroom, well, I think it's got 4 mushrooms in it. Just kidding. There's 5. All 5 that I talked about today. That's it, my friends. We do have a very special surprise coming in your handouts tomorrow. You're going to get your handouts, which will give you some stuff. If you're watching this recording, then you either are going to get your handouts and or you've already got them. You may miss the surprise because it is time sensitive. And then the other thing I want to just mention is, big shout out to our community online. We've got a thriving Instagram and Facebook community. Our social media team is amazing. They're really producing a lot of value added content to educate and share and really support you. So give them some love, say thanks, give them a like on some of the posts, share. If you look at our impact report and all of our other things we've done this year, it's powerful where Harmonic Arts has come from this little farmer's market business, from a mermaid and a mushroom man who were really excited to bring health in this way to a really thriving and amazing company that we have now, doing the best work in supporting the health of our ecosystem, as well as the health of our customers and our team as well. And so, people, planet. Those are the most important things. Okay, last thing I want to mention before I get into this is I want to just mention that this is going to be the 5th time we've done the Vancouver Island Herb Conference. This is an event that I've been part of since 2013, kind of was inspired to bring herbalism more community here on Vancouver Island. So we host this. This is happening in 2 weeks from the time of this recording. And Harmonic Arts is a major sponsor because, well, part of our goal is to bridge the world of plant medicine. You can go to herbconference.ca or herbconference.com, actually, I think as well, is the website. And actually, I think it's herbconference.com, might be .ca as well, I'm not sure. But we do an online conference in November from wherever you are. But if you can make it to Vancouver Island in 2 weeks, June 10th to the 12th, we've got about 25 teachers now, a bunch of evening entertainment, lots of music, herbal elixir bar. We'll be serving up Harmonic Arts products, amazing kitchen with just a wild food feast. And I know I harvested so many nettles this year for our wild food feast. It's insane. But lots and lots of great food, great people, connecting with plants, some of the top experts in this part of the world, really sharing what they know about all things good and healthy. So come join our community, check out the Herb Conference, and I look forward to seeing you there. And if you don't make it, no problem. But just know that there are other conferences. So there's one in Alberta in July. Check that out at the Alberta Herb Conference. Here in the States, there's a few different ones I've been to. I really encourage coming together in community for learning about plant medicine. Okay, that's all for tonight. I'm going to jump on and just answer a few Q&As. So if you have to go, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining. And looking forward to the next one we do. Okay, I will stop my share. All right, thanks everybody. Really appreciate you joining. Let me see if I can get through some of these Q&As and just ask. Okay. Let's see. First question that I've got is from about 45 minutes ago from Clayton. What kind of mushrooms are best for autoimmune disorders, and how does it affect the body on a technical level? Also, is there a mushroom that can directly target the lymphatic system? So let's talk about the lymphatic system first. That is your back alley of your body. That is your sort of where a lot of your garbage goes. if you're working on lymphatic system, you really need to move it. It doesn't have the same pump that the heart does. So swimming, lymphatic brushing, trampolining, these are all really, really important. Most of the herbs for the lymphatic system are actually blood cleansers as well. So red clover, cleavers, these kinds of things. I say if there's a mushroom that can affect that, it's reishi. Reishi is probably the best one, but some with some of the antioxidants like chaga and turkey tail, those are also going to be useful. For autoimmune in general, and wanted to get more technical with that, the biggest thing is actually that any of those conchs do work with autoimmune diseases, and that is because of the branch polysaccharides. So reishi and turkey tail are the best examples of that. And how these branch polysaccharides work is you actually end up if you look at them from a chemical perspective, they're like 1,000 to like 5,000 carbons all linked together, creating these massive kind of structures. This structure helps to both calm down inflammation in the gut lining, but then what our immune system does is as it comes through, it can't cross the blood barrier intact fully. So it gets broken apart into smaller pieces and then reconfigured on the other side of the blood barrier once it goes through the digestive tract. And our white blood cells use this as education. The degrees and angles and branching of these polysaccharides actually end up being kind of weaponry and education for the white blood cells. So they teach them and help calm them down. So this is a big part of autoimmune, is the immune system going nova. Really, it's very simple. The polysaccharides calm down that immune system. They really calm down the haywire of it and help organize it. So lots, I mean, it's not that technical, but really any of the ones with a lot of polysaccharides in them are going to have this effect. Probably the most useful ones are ones like reishi and turkey tail, potentially chaga. But, you know, same with those like that tinder conch that I mentioned earlier, the Felinus species that I mentioned earlier. Those are all really, really good mushrooms, just not fleshy mushrooms. Lion's mane and cordyceps aren't going to have that same effect on autoimmune. Really, you're looking at more the woody type mushrooms. Okay, next question. What mushrooms can I wild harvest in Alberta? This is from Ruben. Red-belted polypore, for sure. That's a great conch you can harvest. Turkey tail, yep. You don't have the same. There's a couple of species of turkey tail. Certain parts of Alberta don't have it, but other parts do. Tinder conch that was mentioned, that horsehoof fungus. Birch polypore is another one that I've seen. Lots of polypores, lots of little polypores you can see. The Ganoderma applanatum, which is the artist conch, you see that in Alberta in some places. Yeah, there's a number of those kind of, I think, Fomentopsis species that are there. There's a few other polypores. You are going to find Hericium as well, the bear's head mushroom, in some places on I think it mostly grows on conifers though, stumps and things like that. You aren't going to find things like your Ganoderma lucidium or Ganoderma suja or organensis, the reishis. You're not going to find some of the more tropical or warm species of mushrooms, but there are lots of conchs. So yeah, Ruben, there's plenty. And there's also a Alberta Mycologist Society. And I'd highly recommend checking in with them because you're also going to find a lot of edibles in Alberta. You do find the great giant puffballs. Certain places you're going to find a lot more of those, a lot of smaller edible mushrooms, yeah, that are there. So, okay. This is more of a comment. Shaggy manes would be like the inky caps that grow in my yard. Yes, they would be. And another question here is, will mushrooms help much with lung health and breathing, inhaling toxic bleaches? Yeah, and things like that. Basically, extreme difficulty in breathing ever since I've had extreme difficulty in breathing ever since and feel like I'm suffocating. Can mushrooms help heal and cleanse my lungs? Yes, but they're part of a protocol. And if you're looking at that, it's cordyceps and reishi. Those are the two I would look at specifically. It's part of a bigger protocol though. Probably the one I would be looking at too is like a bronchi tincture with elecampane. This is one we make at Harmonic Arts, or our lung tea, our lung love tea. Breathe, I think it's called now. And that tea is amazing. It's got a lot of elecampane in it. I really like the straight up elecampane tincture. It's a lung tonic. But yeah, I would be working with some of those kind of herbs. Horehound is another great one for healing the lungs. Motherwort to a degree. But yeah, reishi, cordyceps, those would be the two I would be working with. But I'd also be working with like Vipassana breathing and maybe even Wim Hof training and other kinds of like deep breath work and lung cleansing and like doing like those circle rotations, banging the chest, doing out breaths that are like and just trying to pull out all the toxins and then breathing in. Like there's a bunch of breathing techniques that really are important for lungs. So sorry about that. That would be something I would look to as well. Lung season from an energetic perspective is in the fall, right? This is when most of us get sick. Yeah, so also doing extra lung detoxification work in the fall, energetically, that is the time of year to really maximize that kind of work. So yeah, I'd be doing a little more that way. Take my elecampane tincture during that time of year. Okay, if someone has had MS over 30 years and is fairly advanced, do you think lion's mane can make any benefit at this point? This is from Marlene. This is a tough one. I have seen people do well with lion's mane on MS, for sure. But once it gets really, really advanced, it's hard to make a big dent, in that sense. I would, it's going to be case by case. The thing that I would recommend is that you double or triple the dose and do it for a good month and a half. So get one of those 100-gram jars. It's not a big investment, and double up the dosage for, instead of 100 days, do that in 25 days, do that in a month, maybe, in 30 days. And really just see if you're seeing any benefits that way. I think with MS, the protocol I saw was with ashwagandha and lion's mane and one other herb. I want to say googaloo, but I don't think it's googaloo. It's something else. Maybe it's coleus. I'm not sure. There's an Ayurvedic traditional formula I saw once for advanced MS. And I will say that ashwagandha and lion's mane are two that I would probably add in. I'm such a fan of reishi, and I would highly recommend it anyway because it's grounding the nervous system. So yeah, but lion's mane, high dosage, should have some benefit. A friend of mine's mom had MS for 30 years, and she was pretty advanced. She did pass away, but she found that in him giving her some lion's mane, it did have benefits, but it didn't do everything she had hoped it would. So I just air of caution with that like if it's pretty advanced. Yeah, really you need, probably the biggest problem I see is that people don't take enough when they've got advanced chronic conditions. They think that they should take the one capsule a day or whatever, and it just is not enough. It's just not enough, especially with those things. And so the herbs don't work because they're not taking enough. Okay, another question. Would a topical solution made with lion's mane help heal shingles outbreak externally? There are actually a number of like mushroom external recipes done that way. I don't think lion's mane would be the one. I wouldn't go with lion's mane for shingles. I'd go with something like, yeah, far more antiviral and potent, like a reishi and turkey tail and cordyceps and chaga. It's hard to find agarikon, but making that into an external cream would be probably the most antiviral one. Yeah, biggest things are like oatmeal baths and doing things that are really soothing to the tissues. But yeah, within that, you could easily take a dual extracted mushroom powder like reishi and add it into a oatmeal scrub and put it on to cool down the shingles. And there's a few things like that. You could do some antivirals that way. Chaparral is the one I've heard of most used as a chaparral cream. It's another antiviral herb. Creosote bush is another name for it. I've seen that used for shingles pretty regularly. But yeah, I think you get some benefits out of some of these antiviral mushrooms as well. Okay. Joy's question is, if one cannot attend the conference, will there be opportunity to purchase recording from Herbalists presented? Or will some of that be given in November? Yeah, we're doing a little bit of recording at the conference, not every class. So this is just really a question about if you can't make it in June, I would say come in November to the online one. I understand we live in all different parts of the world. We can't all come in person to do these things, but really, it's so useful to get to, and whether it's this one or another one, to just connect in with community in person if possible, to see all the different walks of life, to know you're not alone. I think that was a huge thing for herbal community for me was, wow, there's lots of other crazy, quirky, wild herbalists out there. And we love to talk about like marshmallow root and what has been useful for kidneys health. And like, I just think it's great. So highly recommend that. The online one, we do have a tea room and there's a chat room in there, and we will have some of the presentations. I'm going to do a number of interviews with herbalists, and I'll probably be posting some of them to YouTube, and we'll be building out more content that way from the conference. But yeah, some of that content will be in November, but I recommend that we're going to have different teachers in November as well, and just keep growing this. One of my missions is to grow herbalism. So a big part of that is just growing more conferences and more education and building that out in platforms for people to learn more about plant medicine. And Harmonic Arts is fully on board with that and sponsoring all of it all the way along, between the Canadian Herb Conference and the Kootenai Herb Conference, the Alberta Herb Conference, and the BC Herb Conference. We're down. And if you know people in Ontario that want to throw a herb conference, reach out to us, because we want to support this forward moving process. Okay. That's how we become plant medicine as people's medicine again, more and more, is through connecting and communicating and educating about it. All right. Okay. All right. Sydney's asking, will the mushroom powders be beneficial to use topically for acne or skin issues, similar to the shingles? And it's yes. In this case, for, the thing about topical treatments is that they work on the surface. And typically, many skin issues come from internal. So often you really need to work internally. So I would be doing both. If you're going to put them on externally, I'd be taking mushrooms internally as well to make sure you're actually healing the liver and actually doing the process of calming down inflammation in the gut and getting better absorption. That's a big part of, often with acne, the skin is actually a very good, healthy organism. And it's just needing, it's just that the other detoxification pathways are not as good. So they're not working as well. So yeah, I'd be working inside as well as outside. And yeah, I have a visitor. Here's our little guy. Say hi. And he's telling me it's time for me to be done on Zoom. All right, so I'm gonna just answer a couple of quick questions. Last two. Looking at your 5 mushroom tincture, and it says not to take if diabetic. Why is that? It's a Health Canada thing. It is good for blood regulating blood sugars, but I think there has been some claims around that. Okay, fam. We wait for 1 second, okay? I'll be with you in 1 second. All right. So I've seen, well, obviously there's lots of studies around chaga on blood sugar stabilizing, but it's a Health Canada claim. It's a hard one with Health Canada, because if there's a study that's showing something different, you've got to say all of the potential hazards. I have not seen anybody taking medicinal mushrooms who's diabetic have any problems, and lots of diabetics have taken medicinal mushrooms. Potentially it could be because there are the carbohydrate levels or the sugar levels. I'm not sure. It's all polysaccharides, but that's still high carbohydrates. Okay, I think I'm going to have to say that's all, folks. Appreciate you. Thanks for joining me. Really appreciate your time. Hope you're all having a wonderful spring and you're getting out and connected with plants. So just, yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for joining the webinar, and we will see you next time. And just remember, you are getting the recording, and you will get all of this information as we go. Okay, ciao for now. Bye.